things Apple. We're joined by Denmark West, advisor at K1 Management. Denmark, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Michelle.
What are you doing this weekend? Are you planning on seeing the movie?
I actually am. I think that Ashton looks like a dead ringer for Jobs in some of those scenes.
You really do. A lot of people have actually been unhappy with the casting of Ashton Kutcher. You think it was a good casting call?
You know, casting isn't really my strong suit. I just think it'll be a good movie to see.
All right, well, one of the people that doesn't seem to be so happy with the movie so far is Steve Wozniak. He spoke at, he was speaking at Gizmodo magazine and said that he's a little concerned that the movie is going to glorify Jobs, and that, quote, he's going to be portrayed or has been portrayed as a saint who was ignored rather than one of the key people who led Apple through failure after failure. Some fighting words from the Woz. Do you think Apple's success was credited entirely to Steve Jobs, or how much of it can he really take credit for?
Well, there's a saying that success has many fathers, and I think it's fair to say that Steve Wozniak is legitimately one of the fathers of Apple's success. Without knowing what the movie says or is about, I hesitate to have a conversation about that, but I do think that there is a lot of folklore around the role that Steve Jobs had. He has an unquestionable success and track record. And you have to give somebody credit, because if you can do it once, it might be lucky. If you can do it twice, you might be very lucky. If you do it several times, you might have to give somebody credit for being good.
Probably have some substance there.
That's right.
Now, Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, he believes that no one can innovate like Steve Jobs, and he's not too optimistic about the future of Apple. But then you've got people like Carl Icahn saying, well, actually, the stock is undervalued. What are your thoughts?
This is actually a really interesting intersection between the notion of innovation and the notion of Apple as an investment. I think you can actually have two different minds and still think that it's a good investment. Meaning, in general, I don't think it's just about replacing Steve Jobs. Any founder who's a true visionary is going to be difficult to replace, and Microsoft is another example that's going through some difficulties there, with Steve Ballmer just now starting to hit stride, at least from a Wall Street perspective in terms of the stock appreciation, but really had a decade of difficult times following the great Bill Gates. Apple is going to go through a similar set of challenges, because you had an iconic leader that might be once in a generation type, that not only had the technology savvy, but also had a creative touch that endeared him to millions from the consumer perspective. The issue then is, from an investment perspective, do you think that what's in the pipeline and what you actually have in terms of cash on the books is worth more than is being reflected in the current stock price? And there's a lot of arguments that could suggest that that's true, even if
well, what
you think
do you think? There's certainly a lot of cash that they're sitting on, but what about what's in the pipeline?
Yeah, so my concern, you know, and I think that this has actually been reflected in a number of places. My concern is that the pace of innovation has slowed considerably since Jobs' untimely death. And that's the thing that I think is really about the long-term value. Do I think that it's a potential trade? Well, it definitely has been for the past month.
Well, one of the products that Apple was supposed to innovate with, and still will, is the iWatch, but it seems like Samsung may be beating it to the punch with its Galaxy Gear. It's a watch-type device. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it's actually a brilliant move for Samsung. Samsung has done a very good job, not just from a product perspective, but from a marketing perspective. And this is yet another in the string of events from a marketing perspective that Samsung has done to not only steal thunder from Apple, but to deposition them as innovators and likewise position themselves as innovators by stepping about a week ahead of what people anticipated was going to be the launch of the iWatch with their own announcement of Galaxy Gear. They are now, you know, in the face of litigation and in the face of patent lawsuits, basically turning the tables on Apple's positioning as being the innovator.
Certainly a lot of patent disputes. What's the likely outcome of this scenario? Do you think this could also lead to some kind of patent fight?
I feel like Samsung and Apple are going to be embroiled in patent litigation for a very long time. And I think that this is going to be yet another case where it's going to have to play out over time. A lot of people don't know that Samsung actually contributed over a quarter of the components to the iPhone.
Right.
So there was a lot of deep and intimate knowledge on both parties' parts about the technology underlying.
Those patent wars may be a plot for yet another movie.